Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, June 5th, 2024, and we'll be answering three questions this week that we've been hearing from international educators, most specifically coming from last week's NAFSA conference in New Orleans that brought together over 8,300 international educators from all over the globe. So we are in recovery mode and scrambling to answer all the emails that have popped in our inboxes while we were away, as well as following up with all the dozens and dozens of contacts that we made over the week that was New Orleans. I'm sure my experience is very similar to yours in that the week itself was an exhausting week, but also one of the most professionally rewarding weeks of the calendar year, every year, because of the opportunities to reconnect with colleagues and forge new alliances and renew old acquaintances and really take steps forward as an institution, hopefully, and in growing our knowledge base, growing our connections, growing our practical steps that we're going to be taking in the next few months to improve what we're doing on campus to better internationalize our campus, better provide for our students, and provide a better overall approach to international education. So we'll all have these lofty goals after an important week like NAFSA, and we're going to get into these three questions today. And like we do each week, the questions we ask on Wednesdays come from our newsletter that comes out on Mondays. And that newsletter is called All the SMIE News Fit to Share. And in case you're wondering, SMIE stands for Social Media and International Education Consulting. So the newsletter on Monday covers top social media stories, top international education stories, often where those overlap in terms of webinars, data points, blog posts, anything that is digital that you need to know about and put on your calendars for upcoming events to attend, data reports to download, survey results to analyze. All of that's going to be covered in there. We also do a global roundup in that newsletter that covers what's happening in other demographics around the world, other major destination markets, I should say, as well as source markets where there may be particular issues that are push and pull factors that are affecting the students' desire to leave their country for study elsewhere. But the newsletter really is focused around providing perspective for all my colleagues in the field. We have two versions of the newsletter, one of which you can subscribe to through our website at smieconsulting.org/subscribe. And you can scroll down, hit the subscribe button, and add your information and be added to the weekly distribution list for that newsletter. It comes out 9 a.m. Eastern Time through email. And if you prefer to get your international ed news through LinkedIn, we have a LinkedIn version as well. Between the two of them, we now have almost 1,950 subscribers. So I'm very excited about the impact that the Roundup is having, as well as the newsletter, on our colleagues in the field as providing a resource for them, a quick digestible newsletter on Mondays that kind of breaks down the top stories of the past week. And then on Wednesdays, we go more in depth into some of the themes we see congealing around those news stories. Now, let's get right into our question of the week. First question of the week is, do you know the entry points to U.S. higher education? And obviously, for international audiences, this is primarily those that come from abroad to start a bachelor's, associate, bachelor's degree, or master's degree, or doctoral program here in the United States. That's certainly a very common path to coming to the U.S. But is it the only path? No, there are multiple paths to entry through a number of different resources, paths through in-country resources, through English language programs, through high schools, through individual English language programs, high schools, boarding schools that attract international students in fairly large numbers each year. And what these entry points are is beyond the traditional pathways that you find, transfer pathways for international undergraduates who are studying at community colleges or through English language programs or through high schools. Those three resources alone count for over 180,000 students every year. In terms of high school students that are international students in U.S. high schools, international students in two-year community colleges, international students in English language programs in the United States. Those are significant numbers that are what we always like to call the low-hanging fruit. There are other pathways through partnerships, through dealing with refugees, dealing with other components of the international education milieu that we saw obviously in NAFSA last week, but certainly there are multiple entry points beyond just the traditional degree seeking from abroad direct to the United States. So the reason why I emphasize that, do you know the entry points? It's a slightly rhetorical question. You wouldn't be in the business if you didn't know what those were. But the fact of the matter is there was a book released last week, though we didn't have physical copies at NAFSA to hand out or to offer for sale. I had the honor of being one of the authors asked to contribute a chapter to this book. There's about 16 or 17 chapters, well over close to 300 pages, I think, in length. This book has been reviewed by several folks that I consider legends in the field that have written chapters on the different entry points and covering the different facets of international education. Just to give you some of the samplings of the promo pieces that we've seen for this book, it's been called a book for the ages, indispensable, much needed and evidence-based, truly a must-read, dynamic cartography, an illuminating roadmap, compelling book, and essential lens. So these are some of the endorsements that the book has received. Again, I was asked to write one chapter in that book, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the point of this book is really to be a very hands-on, practical resource for international educators at U.S. institutions, and I would consider it a must-read for staff that are engaged in international enrollment of any sort on campus. I'm going to be asking our senior vice provost to allow or to purchase at least ebook versions for staff so that they can all get, who are engaged for this 7 or 8 staff across campus who are involved in the missions for international students, so they can understand what we're talking about. Certainly some of the leaders in the missions area, as well as people within our International Global Education Initiatives Unit at UNLV. So the book itself really is what I think we've been lacking, frankly. There are resources that come out every 3-4 years. NAFSA does a publication. There's some great articles here and there, but this is an excellent compendium of how to really go about identifying over 360,000 additional students that you might not have already thought about, how to broaden the student base cost effectively through unconventional thinking and new approaches to partnerships, marketing, and alumni management, how to form alliances, advocate effectively, and plan strategically, and prioritize ethics in what you do. And there's an entire section on tools as well in the book. So it's really one that I encourage my colleagues in the field who I know many of them are already contributors to the book. Jing Luan, former provost at San Mateo Community Colleges in California, Larry Lifson, Andrew Chen, George Kasenga, Mirka Martel, Julie Baer, Lindsay Addington, Anna Asaki-Smith, Maureen Manning, Darla Deerdorf, Layat Habati, Kelly Chung, Shannon Davidson, Ralph Lemke, Gretchen Dobson, Ben Waxman, Syed Jamal, Ling Jiang, Francis Miller, David D. Maria, Marcy Franken, Lisa Maroney, Perry Nielsen, Lars Weston, Christina Davison, Karen Bauer, Chanyu Shen, Peter Vermeulen, Brian Whalen, and Krishna Bishta. All of them were involved in the production of this book. I'm just happy to be amongst some of the leaders in our field who contributed a chapter, and really proud to be associated with this book. So please, if you have a need to provide tools to even senior leadership on your campus to understand the complexities involved with international education and perhaps the opportunities to expand what you're doing in international education circles for your students that you're trying to attract to your institution and broaden your base and diversify and all of that. These are some of the best articles or best chapters I've read on international enrollment management in my career. So I would strongly recommend purchasing it. There's in the links, one of the links I'm dropping in, there's two. One is to the Payslip, Star Scholar Press, excuse me, and you can, it's called PayHip, not Payslip. PayHip, I'm not getting any proceeds from this book. I just want to be clear on that. But it is Entry Points to U.S. Education, Accessing the Next Wave of Growth. So that's the full title of the book. So some great opportunities to educate your international education team, hopefully senior leadership as well, perhaps make it a staff retreat reading, whatever it might be. So that's what I will leave you with on the first question on do you understand the entry points to U.S. education? Truly a book that I'm very proud to be a part of, and hope that if you're wondering what my chapter is in that book, it's a compilation of your 6 Ps to strategic international enrollment management as a strategic approach to identifying the right partners, platforms, approaching it with peers and personalization in mind, but without proper perspective and planning, all of those plans would be for naught. But it really walks you through each of the 6 Ps and how they all come together to form really a sound philosophy based on 6 principles of how you should be approaching your strategic international enrollment management on campus. So that's the first question of the day. Let's move on to number 2. Does OPT work for most students? This is a topic that you always hear talked about in circles, particularly at NAFSA and kind of in higher ed circles as well, international higher ed circles. You wonder all the policies that countries have developed to provide pathways for students to work after graduation, the graduate route in England, the post-study work visa in work permit in Canada, similar work permissions in Australia, New Zealand, other countries, that there's always questions. Are students getting jobs in their field? Are students getting paid adequately for their work? How many that apply actually stay for work? So these are some of the questions that many of us ask, or as we look at our country's policies and our institutions' abilities to help them get appropriate work. That is something that we need to be laser focused on, because those results of are your students staying on for OPT, you can track that. You know that if you have an ISS office, you have to. If you have international students on your campus that manage the SEVIS database for your students, that data on their employers is found in SEVIS and can be tracked and can be certainly data mined for the kind of things that you need to know as whether OPT is working for most international students. And one of the things you hear in other countries is that, oh yeah, it's available. This 2-year work permission is available, or a year or 3 years depending on the country and the program. It's available, but students just aren't really taking advantage of it. Well, the sheer numbers would say that students have 3 options, right? When they finish a degree with you, they can apply for the OPT permission that they have available to them based on the degree that they did, either 1 to 3 years. If it's STEM, 3 years, up to 3 years. If it's not, then it's just the 1 year. They can do that after each degree level. So when they graduate, that's one option. The other is to go home. Maybe they've already got a commitment back home to with a job waiting for them, or take over the family business, or whatever it might be. They may leave the United States. They may, and they could be leaving the United States to work in their home country or work in a third country. The third option is they could be going on for further study, unless they're obviously a doctoral student. Maybe they do postdoc fellowship stuff somewhere. But there are three basic buckets of students that you could be dealing with after graduation each year. So in a given year, you might have 500 students, 300 international students graduate in a year, let's say, for example, graduate and undergraduate combined. How many of those would go on for OPT? Our numbers in the last year, we've had about 260 international students. I think that's current international students that are on OPT. And then we have those that go home each year, those that go on for further study. So there are, again, three different buckets of the graduating students that are in that. So I would say probably out of every graduating class of undergrad and grad combined, we might have 300 students. I would say it's probably 120 or so will stay and apply for OPT, and the remaining will go on for further study or return home or to a third country for work. So does it work for most international students in the United States? And when it comes to OPT, what the numbers are we know how many international students are on OPT in the United States each year because that data is collected at least through the Open Doors numbers. We don't really see that in the SEVIS by the numbers because they don't separate out OPT as a separate category for international students in terms of how they notate them. But you see what within the Open Doors numbers, you see year-old data, of course. We don't know. Institutionally, you can get it because you know how many students graduated each year, how many go on OPT, and how many go home, or at least are no longer in the United States. That could be a number of different options after that. But having true data on survey results, on recent graduates and whether they are actually working on OPT. Now, in TED, one of our favorite providers of quality data and reports on the topics that are important to us, has done a study over the last few months that found that out of almost 1,800 respondents, and these were students in key states. They looked at students in, I think it was New York, New York, Texas, California, and Kansas, I think. California, Texas, Kansas, and Massachusetts, so not New York. So it was conducted by 12 different institutions in those 4 states with about 1,800 respondents that they were from 131 different countries, that 64% engaged with OPT or CPT while they were studying, and that the vast majority of them are still in the country. 83% of those surveyed who used OPT or CPT are now working in the country, in the United States. So that's what the survey results found, that 77% of those 1,800 or so graduated with STEM degrees, and 65% said that they now hold STEM-related jobs as well. So they're 65%, I don't know if it's 65%, I think it's 65% of the total rather than 65% of the 77% surveyed who were STEM. So that would make sense to me in terms of good percentage of those who had STEM degrees want to stay. Why not? 65% of the of all the respondents decided that they hold STEM-related jobs. So those are significant numbers. Why? Because they get up to 3 years of post-study work for each degree level, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate. So those tell us a story that they are that carrot of the 2 extra years of work permission that has been in place since 2008 and late in the Bush administration has had a significant impact. It's keeping students in the country longer on OPT, and that allows them future benefits of extra years of work permission, and increases their runway to potentially qualifying for H-1B. So the good news is, if you're in a STEM field and after the first year the company decides they want to hire you on a more permanent basis, semi-permanent basis, they can apply for an H-1 year. If you don't get it the first year, you still got 2 more years of OPT that you can still work for them, and then they can keep applying for that H for you in those second and third years. So the data is really showing from this survey result that that students will take advantage of the OPT, particularly if they're on STEM. So whereas the numbers of STEM degree or STEM students in the United States is a little over 50%. The data for the respondents shows that 77% of the respondents were STEM. So those are probably the ones that are most likely to stay in and work for and take advantage of their OPT. Maybe those that aren't STEM, it's a little bit harder market to qualify for OPT if you are not if you basically only have a year to convince an employer to keep you on longer terms. That's more of a risk for the employer. So there may be fewer, that's why there may be fewer non-STEM students who are on OPT. Because they might get jobs elsewhere. They might need to go on for further study. They might decide, hey, well, they're going to be, if they're graduating with doctoral programs and they're non-STEM, they may be staying in university lives, and universities are exempt from the H-1B caps, so they can hire as many H-1Bs as they want, as long as they follow the proper Department of Labor hiring procedures. So the data really does seem to say that the benefits are there for international students to continue on with OPT, that they are taking advantage of it, particularly those in STEM fields. So there is data that shows that even with that advantage, even from the survey results, that international students that has a U.S. degree and lives in the U.S. are 21% more likely to own or rent a home than their domestic student equivalents, interestingly. And even with that advantage, in the article, Pi News article about this, only 39% of respondents said they intend to continue living and working in the country. 45% say they plan to leave, go home, or to a different country. So it's almost evenly split, slightly less saying that they're planning to stay long term, which they do have the right if they get onto an H-1B track for semi-permanent residency, for permanent residency and then eventually citizenship. But a little less than half want to go home or to a third country. So that's so you say a little less than a third, about third. Well, let's see, 84%. So we got 84% between the two of them staying or going, and about 16% undecided. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of what the numbers are. So 16% plan to pursue further study. That was the third option. There we go. That makes more sense. So that helps from an institutional perspective, that they also have some salary data jobs on the jobs for the students in California, or software developer pay, and so some really interesting numbers here. But this INTED report that's profiled in this Pi News article really is, I think, a very insightful piece to kind of lend credence to, hey, if you are STEM, you're going to have opportunities for OPT in the United States. The greater majority are taking advantage of those. So that's what we're looking at right now within the second question here. The other part of that is so the data showing from the survey that OPT is successfully being used by international students. And if you look on the front end of the process, what motivates, say, for example, graduate business students choosing North American institutions? There was a QS report that came out last week as well. Top three or four pieces of the puzzle are welcoming environment for international students at 54%, offers scholarship 54%, and third and fourth are it has good career services and it has high graduate employment rates. So those for international students coming to the United States for business programs is also an important factor of that. And we've seen increasingly business programs in the United States have been adding in STEM specific graduate business programs in quantitative finance, data intelligence, data security, or cybersecurity, data analytics, those kinds of things that do qualify for STEM, that have that business focus. So those are some real benefits for graduate business students coming in. The career services and high graduate employment rate, where almost half identified those as the top reasons why they're choosing business schools here. So that should give us a little bit of good food for thought as we move forward. Last question of the day is, what did you learn at NAFSA last week? And I asked this for everybody. And this is a topic that, when you think about it, I mentioned earlier at the top that this conference is always the most exhausting week of my year, but also the most exhilarating, because I get so much energy from the connections I renew, the new relationships I form, and the things that I learn. And for me, getting to talk to experts in key markets that we're trying to attract students from, and hearing some comments that are counter to what I've been seeing in a lot of the data that's been coming out in terms of India, for example, as kind of main driver of growth for the United States. Apparently this fall, may be an off year for us if we're comparing it to last fall. And the reasons for that are India, for anyone who's been there, knows that they are hypersensitive about anything to do with job market in the United States. If there are regulations coming in that might impact H-1B distribution, they know more about H-1B than I think we do in the United States, even in international ed circles. They have an awareness of the fluctuations in markets, and how, even though we think the UK market's down, we think that Australian market's down for vocational education. Sure, it is, and Canada's certainly down for vocational. That they're having to change. They're changing tacks, but you also know that we've attracted primarily master's and doctoral level students from India. About 25%, not even a quarter, I don't think, are from undergraduate sources from India. But we see now that Canada, the colleges there that we're really having to rely on vocational students from India to come in and kind of shortcut and try and get their way to work and residency. Those windows are closing for those kinds of students. That it might be an opportunity to open for Indian students who are looking to go for master's programs in Canada. So we might not be seeing that, but they are in Canada, perhaps. In the UK, they've cut off the dependent visa, which attracted quite a few Indians to the UK. Are they seeing differences in their numbers there? And I think the numbers have, at least application-wise, have been going down. So hearing from some of our top agencies in India say that, hey, it's going to be a rough year because, hey, the rupee is still down against the dollar another 7 or 8% this year. We see the wait times for visas are getting worse, even though the new Hyderabad consulate, the visa denial rates are up. There's some other factors, again, with the job market that there's some fears of what Trump will do if he's elected again. There's all sorts of different elements there that can affect how we do what we do, and it's important to be listening for those from some of the key people in the industry. So we've got this great book that was just released. We've got the data and reports that everybody seems to highlight that pop up in NAFSA, conference sessions and all of that. So we really see a lot of new ideas percolating up to the surface, and new theories being shared, and I always get energized by a lot of those, and I always find one or two things that outside the box that I'm really eager to explore a little bit further for our institution, and some opportunities to do some new outreach to markets that we might not have thought about in the past. Maybe getting to Bangladesh for the first time later this summer. So we'll see what happens, but there's always optimism coming out of NAFSA. And I know I was already at a reception when the news broke on Thursday about the indictments or the conviction on all counts former President Trump, and that in NAFSA circles was hugely received. It happened during one of the plenary addresses, and people were texting and all having all sorts of fun celebrating the 34 counts or whatever it was. But is that the end for him? No, it's not. He will probably appeal. Maybe he'll get it overturned. We don't know yet, but he'll have that on his record now. Maybe it will. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. Who knows? But what I learned last week at NAFSA is that this field is ever changing from month to month, certainly from year to year. There are drastic differences impacting what we do in our profession, and it's a program, a place that I call my home. And I did my weekly roundup, or my midweek roundup last week from the exhibit hall, talking about finding your international tribe and how NAFSA and the people that attend that conference are very much my tribe, and I value them very highly both professionally and personally. For the place they hold in my heart and in my head, the people that I've been able to build strong relationships with over the last 31 years I've been in the field. So always lessons learned at NAFSA. We'll be sharing more of those as the weeks go on. But for now, I wish you the best of luck and look forward to chatting with you next week. Cheers.